Exercise 18. You're playing black, it's your turn. What are your thoughts about this position? Now to the solution. First of all, this position does look like a regular game. Well, it is one, and here white sacrificed a pawn, so you are pawn up, and in return white has a big initiative and maybe an attack later on your king. So in a regular game, if you play intuitively, you would think about, well, I have to defend myself, finish my development, exchange pieces, go into the endgame, and all of this is true, but it is the positional way of thinking. Before you play positionally by the rules and so on, you always have to check the active moves. And this is in this position the case. That's why it's the exercise. And if you go by this, then you go first with checks. There is queen takes d4. Well, it's terrible, obviously. Then there's a second move. This is bishop takes c2. And now it's getting interesting because if white takes on c2, then queen takes d4 check is working again, and you, after, for example, king to h1, can take the knight on e5. So you win 2 pawns. And certainly this is a good continuation. You can also check the moves b5 is also an active move, but doesn't give you any advantage. Therefore, bishop c2 does look like the right continuation, and it is the solution in this very position. Before we continue, I want to emphasize that it is really important in your own games to always check the active moves and not get the habit of, most probably there is no attack for black because it's white attacking, so you just skip and abandon the thought completely. And that way, most of the cases you're right, but then you will miss most of the tactics that may suddenly appear in your games. So, bishop takes c2. White reacted with queen e2 because he didn't want to lose his knight because it's a great attacking piece. Black still can take on d4, and white cannot defend with bishop to 3 because then the knight is hanging. So the continuation was king to h1. So in this game, I give you a hint. You should, or you may move your bishop away from c2. You don't necessarily need to do this in this very move because technically if white takes on c2 you can take on e5, so it's not really under threat. But at the same time there are other threats of white, so we just make it safe and move the bishop back to the safety, because he might, for example, also be attacked later with for example, knight to f3, and then in the next move white can take on c2. So your task is move the bishop away to the best square, and take time for this task because it's not a simple one, and do it by the routine that I explained to you earlier. To the solution. So first of all, we need to spot all the possibilities that the bishop can move to, and this is these 3 squares. And what would be a wrong way of thinking about this position is to go by your gut feeling. So for example, I played the bishop there because there's the most active. This is may be true for positional play, but before you play positionally you always have to spot the tactics. And in this position, for example, the move bishop to f5 would be a big mistake because if you briefly check all the active moves from white, then you will notice that there is the move rook takes f5. Again, how you spot it, you just go through all the possibilities, there are no checks, and as for the captures, these are only the 3 possibilities. So you check them, and once you come to the move rook takes f5, you will see that there is a discovered attack on the king. And either knight takes f7, or even better, knight takes c6, wins the game for white, because the queen is attacked and it cannot move to e4 because the knight is defending the square. So bishop f5 is losing already. Black played bishop e4 in the game, and this is also a bad move. On the first side, it might look like a strong one because the queen is attacking e5, also the bishop is pretty active on e4, and so on and so forth. But again, you need to go by the brute tactic and not by your gut feeling when you have to calculate. So again, you check all the possibilities that white have in this position, and the strongest move is knight takes f7. The idea is, if black takes on f7, well, if he doesn't, then the rook is hanging, if e6 is hanging, so white is pretty happy. Then the knight is pinned, and you cannot take on e4. So for example, queen takes, you just, well, give up. So the game isn't finished yet, since you are 2 pawns up, but white has a huge attack on the king, and therefore it's pretty grim for black. I'll give you a small bonus task. Let's flip the position and search for white. So in this position, black continued with queen to d7, and it's your task to find the best continuation for white. So the solution is not knight to g5, since intuitively it is the very first move that should come into your mind. But the best move is bishop takes e6. Again, we are just with the active moves, check all the possible ones, and then you, well, also go with bishop takes e6. Admittedly, it isn't the best move if you just don't calculate anything because you give up the bishop, but if you just look further, then you simply win the queen, either by this line, or if the king takes, then knight to c5, it's a check and attacks the queen again. So let's flip black back to black, and the solution is simply to play bishop to g6. The bishop defends the pawn on f7, so knight takes f7 is not a threat any longer. Black is 3 pawns up, and the game continues. And for example, if white tries to come through with brute force, so bishop takes and then queen takes, then you just play bishop e7 and the king is safe. On rook to e1 you can continue with queen to d7, so you survive the attack and you continue the game. So the whole well, exercise was to check all the moves, but also calculate all the possible continuations that there are in the position for white.